joyful morning to one and all present here. I, Nandini Shrivastava, student of DME Media School, welcome you all to the second edition of World's first 10-day Digital Life International Conference, ICANN 4. The conference is being organized by Delhi Metropolitan Education in collaboration with School of Communication and Creative Arts, Deakin University, Melbourne, Australia. We are privileged that ICANN 4 is being supported by Indian Council of Social Science Research, ICSSR. Before diving into today's technical session, I would like to brief you all about the previous editions of ICANN that were indeed successful. ICANN 1, held in March 2018, was based on the theme India Changing Aspects of News. ICANN 2, held in November 2018, was all about Indian cinema and alternate networks. And ICANN 3, the first online edition of the conference, was held in June 2020, and the theme was Issue of Community Agendas and News with the hashtag Conference for Change. The theme for this year's conference is Information, Communication and Artificial Network, and the hashtag is Communication Redefined. ICANN 4 is also supported by its 4 knowledge partners, K.R. Mangalam University, Gurugram, Haryana, and Mass University, Kolkata, Makhanlal Chaturvedi National University of Journalism and Mass Communication, Bhopal, and Vigyan Prasar, Government of India. Additionally, we have the Department of Communication and Journalism, Guwahati University, as our academic partner. Our international partner is Institute for International Journalism, E.W. Scripps School of Journalism, Ohio University, USA. And our media partner is The Policy Times. ICANN is a flagship conference of DME Media School, and today it had made an international name for itself. ICANN 4 is a clear example of it. We have participation of about 60 eminent academicians and researchers from 5 different continents and 11 countries, namely India, South Korea, Malaysia, Singapore, Bangladesh, USA, Mexico, France, Italy, Australia, and Ghana. More than 100 media educators and researchers have gathered to present their papers in the conference. We have a total 36 live sessions, including 9 technical sessions, 3 workshops, 7 panel discussions, 3 special sessions, and 10 masterclasses. One of the most unique things about ICANN 4 is that all 9 technical sessions are being chaired and co-chaired by a galaxy of intellectual women representing different states of the country. It's a matter of pride for us to be a part of DME, an institution that hasn't stopped by these tough times, but instead fueled by it. I would also like to tell everyone that at DME Media School, we have a student body, SPARK, that stands for Students with Positive Attitude and Resonating Communication. We also have official newsletter named Journalism at DME, a fortnightly publication that covers all the major activities happening in and out the campus. It's a student-centric newsletter carried out entirely by them under the supervision of faculty members. DME TV, our official YouTube channel, where you can find the playlist related to all the events, lectures, film festival, and all conferences. You can also attend our live session through our official Facebook page. For more information, follow us on our social media handles. Links are being shared in the chat box. Now, I will request Professor Dr. Ambrish Saxena, Dean DME Media School, Director DME Studios and Production, Director International Relations, DME and convener of this conference to say a few words. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Nandini. This is indeed a matter of pleasure that the conference has entered into its 6th day. And this morning we already have finished just now a session which was brought to us by Deakin University and by Sean Redmond. And now this is the technical session which follow. This is the 5th technical session of the conference. In all, there are 9 technical sessions. And the exclusive thing is, the most distinct thing is, all the technical sessions are being chaired and co-chaired by women scholars. So this session is being chaired by Dr. Asha Singh. So I'm obliged to her that she accepted our request to manage to grace this technical session. And this technical session is basically on OTT web series in the phase of COVID-19. The just now finished panel discussion that was also more or less on similar lines, wherein the cinema and the celebrity culture was being discussed in Asian countries. So, in a way, that also covered the entertainment sector, and this technical session is also revolving around that. And since the time this COVID 19 has struck, there have been many changes which have come in the entertainment sector. We all Indians, rather all Asians, are fond of entertainment and cinema and the films, but then since the theaters have been closed for more than a year, or opened in between with a lot of restrictions. So the whole entertainment has remained confined to television screen, and primarily the OTT. So all OTT platforms and the OTT content got a spurt during this time, and everybody is fond of web series. And all the papers are around this theme, and I feel there will be some good presentations made. So I'm looking forward to listening to all such presentations. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Now, coming to our technical session 5 with the theme OTT and web series in the phase of COVID 19, pandemic, and lockdown, the session is being presided by Dr. Asha Singh. Dr. Asha Singh is Assistant Professor in Gender Studies with Center for Studies in Social Science, Calcutta, CSSC, and ICSSR Institute in MHRD. Also, she has taught at Ambedkar University, Delhi, Amity School of Communication, Amity University, Noida, and School of Media and Communication, Admas University, Kolkata. Prior to her academic engagement, she worked as a journalist in Hindi newspaper, Nai Dunia, Bhopal, and Lokmat Samachar, Maharashtra. Her PhD is from Tata Institute of Social Science, Mumbai. Her doctorate work focuses on intersection of gender, caste, communication, and migration in Bhojpuri folk songs. Her current research focuses on the sociology of Bhojpuri language, its institutional history, and implication of social transformation. Now, I request Dr. Asha Singh to come and address the audience. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much for such elaborate introduction. Um, Let me begin by thanking Professor Dr. Amrish Saxena for having me here, first of all, and secondly, for considering my request to reschedule my session. My session was scheduled on Sunday. It was a panel on gender, but I have been fighting fever since Friday, and I'm a little low on energy, so I'm apologizing for that as well. I am really glad because I have been closely watching this communication conference from the past few days. And it is remarkable to me that it is a conference which has sort of blurred public-private divide. Because for the first time, I can see, because I'm in social sciences, and usually the traditional disciplines of social sciences, you will not see institutions across different kind of affiliations coming together to discuss, to interact. So this is a communication conference which has brought together not only national institutions which are of different kind, research institutions, and also international institutions. So it is a very important event. Uh, and it is very important for the discipline itself, for the discipline of communication, because this is a communication which can, this is a discipline which cannot be handled by certain niche or exclusive spaces. This is a discipline which requires a multidisciplinary approach and multi-institutional cooperation. So that's why this is something which is a phenomenal exercise, and I congratulate DME Media School for this and all of you. Secondly, a few words on the conference themes itself, especially information communication and network. This is very important. I've been living in an era where physical communication or face-to-face communication is limited in our everyday lives. So communication has redefined itself and it has taken new dimension. There is a lot of communication. There is no dearth of communication, but it has been redefined. So what are its cognitive impact? How has it changed our social relations? How it is impacting our psychology is something to ponder upon. It is a matter of investigation. So I think various panels are in some or the other manner discussing and addressing these issues, because when I was reading the abstracts, I found I read abstracts for the other panel also, gender panel, and when I was reading this, I found that all these questions which people are investigating or are thinking through are discussing this redefined communication, are trying to make sense, to theorize something which is fast changing, which is constantly evolving. For example, OTT, the today's theme, it is something which theoreticians cannot theorize immediately. This is something which has part of our vocabulary, which has been part of our vocabulary from the past, I think 1.5 years, because it was not very popular in common public and it was not part of our everyday life, though the media and communication professionals and people who are studying or people who are engaging and making this technology work are aware. But I'm talking about common usage. I'm talking about part of our vocabulary universe. It has become part of our vocabulary universe very recently. So why is that so? And why people are talking about it in a much more detailed manner these days is something I am looking at. Whenever I'm looking at all these abstracts, it's something coming up again and again. But there is a sense of lacuna also. Like one cannot completely say that this is it. This is something which can be said. This is the final word on this particular idea. So I'm really looking forward. I won't take a lot of time because there are, I think, 9 presentations, and they have very interesting questions to put in front of audience. So I will hand over this platform to you as soon as the session begins. We will take it forward, and during the session, during Q&A session, a lot of other issues will come up which we will be able to handle more specifically. Right now we can talk about it very generally and very, and there is a lot of ambiguity in it, but to look at these abstract in a very specific, give them more time, we would need to listen to them patiently. So I think I will handle this platform to you, and you take it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And the session of co-chair is Ms. Mudita Raj, Assistant Professor, DME Media School, whom I request to take over from here. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Nandini. Good morning, everyone. I warmly welcome you, ma'am, to chair this technical session of ICANN4 on OTT and web series in the face of COVID-19 pandemic. Before we begin, let me read out the rules of the session. Participants should enter with their names as mentioned in the communication with us. Participants are requested to mute their mics when others are presenting. Participants are requested to introduce themselves and their topics. They will be given 5 to 8 minutes for presentations, followed by Q&A. Questions will be invited in the chat box. In case any question query in the midst of the presentation, the participants should choose the option of raising hands. So now, without much delay, I'd request our first presenter, Ms. Soumya Sharma, to present her research. Her topic is binge watching on the over-the-top platforms, analysis of emerging media trends among youth. Ms. Soumya?
A very good morning to all of you, and thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I am Soumya Sharma from Manav Rachna International Institute of Research and Studies, Faculty of Media Studies and Humanities. And the title of my paper is Binge Watching on Over-the-Top Platforms, Analysis of Emerging Media Trend Among Youth. Okay, so in the paper, what I've tried to study and what I've tried to research about is, we know that over the years, over the recent time, the OTT, like ma'am has mentioned, OTT platforms have become very popular, and binge watching as a trend has become even more popular with the coming of OTT platforms. And a majority of the base of these OTT platforms, the audience, are youngsters. Young audience are there, so they are the viewers, and they post about binge watching, about the shows that they watch on OTT, on social media as well. So this research paper aims to identify and to understand this trend of binge watching among the youngsters by examining what motivations youngsters have behind binge watching any content on OTT platforms. So, quickly, I'll just talk about what binge watching is, as we are already aware. It's, when a person watches 2 or more than 2 episodes, of a show in just one sitting, or, in short duration. It's generally more common in the case of shows rather than in case of movies. Then, as we are aware, OTT are the video platforms, video streaming platforms like Netflix, Hotstar, Amazon Prime Video, platforms that have become popular recently, and where we can stream content and watch content online. Then the connection between youngsters and binge watching, as I have mentioned earlier also, why I have chosen youngsters, for this particular paper, is that many researchers have mentioned in their researches and their studies that, millennials and Gen Z also, for that matter, they make up the majority of the subscriber base of these popular OTT platforms. So we know that people from all age groups are there on these platforms today, and they watch content, but the majority of the audience are youngsters. So it's obviously difficult to get the precise numbers there, but they're very active, and then they constantly post about it on social media as well. So the reason why they binge watch so much was something that I wanted to research, and I wanted to find out, and that's why this study was conducted. So the major objectives to conduct this study were to find out about the motivations behind binge watching for youngsters on these platforms, also to find about the behavior patterns of them towards binge watching on these platforms. So how the youngsters consume the content on OTT platforms, how they behave towards this. These were the 2 major motivations that I had, objectives that I had in my mind. So for this, primary research was conducted, and the data was collected through online questionnaire. Around 140 people were questioned. The respondents obviously were, belong to the young generation, in the age group of 18 to 28. So from different cities like Delhi, Mumbai, Haryana, and so on. And some of them were students, the other were young working professionals. So a little bit about the review of literature about this. From the earlier researches that have already been done on this topic or related to this area, tell us that why people are so active on on these OTT platforms, and why youngsters watch content on OTT platforms, and especially binge watching, is because these platforms somewhere give the freedom which earlier traditional television never had or never gave to the audience. The gatekeeping that was there in the traditional television is not there on these OTT platforms anymore. So Netflix or other platforms like Netflix cater to the audience, and they give them what they want to watch right now. And obviously, because platforms like Netflix give them recommendations as well. So if I'm watching a particular kind of content, the platform will take the data of my behavior pattern, like viewing pattern, and it will give me recommendations on that. So that's like the customized contents that there on these platforms also is a very big factor. Then another paper talks about, how a large number of audience, especially youngsters, they watch back-to-back episodes, finishing an entire series in just a few days or sometimes in just a day. So, also in the paper, the author has mentioned that the journalists sometimes compare binge watching like with binge eating. So, how we eat a packet of chips. Look, it's unhealthy. We know that's unhealthy, but we still consume that. And, once you start, it's difficult to stop. So binge watching on these platforms is also somewhere it can, it can be said that it is also like that, that if you consume it in excess, you may feel ill, you know about it, but then you still do it because you like doing that. And for many youngsters, they have different motivations. For many youngsters, it's like a stress buster. For some people, it's like a relaxation. For other, it's a guilty pleasure to watch one episode after another. Also, there's a concept called FOMO, which is the fear of missing out. When in a group of people are talking about a particular show, and in case you don't know about it, you'll feel that you feel left out and you want to participate in the conversation. And that is why, that is another reason the earlier researchers have mentioned that why people binge watch. So it's like a terrible but awesome experience to binge watch, as said by many audience. Another thing that's there is that, it's binge watching behavior, or this trend is or driven, it's an automatically driven behavior. Sometimes we don't even realize it, but we are doing it without even realizing it. So that's another factor that's there. So some of the findings and conclusions that I've come across in this paper are, when we try to look at the motivations behind binge watching, we asked the people different questions, whether they understand the concept of binge watching, what makes them binge watch the most, do they get emotionally connected with the characters when they watch a show or a series, and many more questions like this. So the results of the study indicate that most of the youngsters highly indulge in binge watching. More than half of the respondents said that they do watch content back to back on a daily basis or on a regular basis. So that's a common trend among the youngsters. It proves that. Also, we asked them about the most preferred OTT platform, and Netflix was the most popular, as answered by the respondents. So that answers why Netflix has become so popular and so viral over time, and why today binge watching and Netflix and chills, terms like these have become synonymous. Then the motivation, the main reason behind conducting this study was to find what drives these youngsters to watch back-to-back content or to binge watch. So, some of the motivations that I've mentioned here are that they prefer watching back-to-back content because they feel thrilled by watching it, or they feel excited. Also, as earlier studies had mentioned, for many people, especially youngsters, it works like a stress buster. So after a day in college or after work, they like to sit and watch this to relax their mind. So either to excite themselves or to relax their mind. Obviously, it depends on the kind of content that they are watching. Also, it was a little surprising that the factor, the FOMO factor and the fear of missing out was there, but it was not the dominating factor as per the study. So also there's a very major reason why people watch back-to-back content, that there is an option of clicking the next button. You must have noticed that on platforms like Netflix and other platforms, the shows generally are so interesting that they leave you on a cliffhanger and you want to know what happens in the next show. So you basically, without even realizing, click on the next button and you watch it. So before you realize it, you have already finished 3 or 4 episodes. So that is another factor why youngsters binge watch. Another major motivation that can be concluded by the study is that it also gives these youngsters a new perspective about things, a new different viewpoints. So generally binge watching is associated with negative connotations only, but we can say that it's not always negative, because a lot of times people get hope, or they feel positive after watching a particular type of content. So that is another reason why youngsters indulge in binge watching. And obviously they get influenced by other, and they influence too. So if peers, in a peer group, if friends talk about shows, or when they talk about series, they give each other recommendations, and that's also a very big factor why people start binge watching in the first place. Just to conclude, I'll say the last factors were obviously forming an emotional connect with the character. That was also something that was another factor. And when we talk about the behavioral patterns, youngsters know that binge watching on these OTT platforms it does affect their sleep or their daily routine or their academic or other activities. But they still do it, knowing that also they do it, they indulge in that. And it has become a priority in their life. It has become a part of their daily routine. So, they understand the concept of binge watching. They are aware of the pros and cons of it, and but they still do it. So these were some of the motivations that we came across in the study. So because I don't have time, I think I would like to conclude here. Thank you so much.
Over to you, Asha ma'am.
So how many questions am I allowed to ask? And am I the only one who will be asking, or will the floor will be open? No.
The floor is open, ma'am, but I haven't received any questions from the
Okay,
audience.
okay.
So you can go.
Okay, so my question to you, interesting presentation, I must say. The first question to you would be, how are you conceptualizing youngster? Youth could be a very broad concept, and you have taken 140 people. So I would like to know about their social profile. Who are they? Where are they located? What is their class location? So yeah, if
Yeah.
you
Yes,
want to.
ma'am. Basically, the people, sent the questionnaires to belong to age group between 18 to 28, and they were either students or working professionals, and they were, as I mentioned, they were from different places, like different cities, like Delhi, Mumbai, Haryana, because it was an online questionnaire, so that was sent to people of who belong to different age groups as well as different cities. So that's I took a sample of 140 people for this paper, ma'am.
Okay, so my only worry, because I have seen youth is a category which is not unpacked properly, because there are rural youth also, because you said Haryana, Delhi and Mumbai and metropolitan cities, and the kind of media habits they have, the kind of class location. Sorry, did I miss something? No. Am I connected?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Yeah. So the kind of class location they will come from is understandable, but because you have sent it to different people, and in a state like Haryana, so there are different kind of youth. So what is the nature of their consumption? Will that differ with the spatial location of this youth? Is something, because that should also come up, how it is impacting people differently who are located spatially in a different places, or who belong to different classes.
Yeah.
Something one would like to know about.
Yes, ma'am. Exactly. Basically, ma'am, what I try to do is because we interacted with students of different universities also. So as I am also there, in the university in Faridabad. So we tried, we contacted students from here as well for the study. So that's why some of them reside here in Faridabad. So that's why I tried taking. I know I got your point, and it's noted. I understood. So I'll keep this in mind whenever I conduct a study or a research next time.
Okay. So I'm done, Ms. Mudita.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Soumya. It was a brilliant presentation. I think the future scope of this topic is huge, because we see that there is a shift with OTT coming as the mainstream now. So very good. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
So our next presentation is from Dr. Teenam Bora, Assistant Professor, DME Media School. Her topic is From the Closet to the Screen, Digital Narratives of Sexuality in Indian Web Series. Ma'am?
So good morning to everyone. I am Dr. Teenam Bora, and I'm going to make a presentation on my paper. It's called From the Closet to the Screen, Digital Narratives of Sexuality in Indian Web Series. So, sexuality. When we talk about sexuality, it's something that pervades in multiple aspects of social existence in all societies, and has always been an important theme of research in the social and human sciences. So it's not merely about sexual activities, but covers a range of aspects from one's sexual identity, orientation, and position in the society. So the hierarchy that privileges the male in dualist systems of gender also gives the structure for how sexuality works in the society. Since sexuality is positioned as the critical point of contact between the genders, it is also used as a means to regulate them. So to deconstruct where desire comes from and how sexuality works, a variety of theories have been advanced to explain these rigid theories of human sexuality. At present, theories of sexuality range from sexual identity to sexual activity, from pathology to preference. On one hand, our sexuality can be seen as a part of us and explained in terms of a biological foundation, or that something that we are born with. From another perspective, sexual orientation can also be seen as social constructivism, which states that instead of biological factors, our sexual orientation is based on social or cultural factors. Thus, the overwhelming predominance of heterosexuality in society would be attributed to the compelling social pressures which are exerted on men and women, leading to people believing that heterosexuality is the only way to live. So discussions on gender and sexuality had never been more commonplace, explicit, and essential than today in the present age of popular culture and its associated media representations. The significant role that media representations play in molding the audience's perception of gender and sexuality has been highlighted by scholars over the years. So discussions on sex or sexuality have mostly been a taboo matter in our country, both within the society as well as in popular media representations. Media narratives of sexuality in content on Indian televisions and films are found to be limited to those of objectification of women by sexualizing their bodies through the male gaze, and the reinforcement of heteronormativity, while representations of homosexuality and transsexuality are either invisible or skewed. So we are aware of many attempts made by many filmmakers to portray sex more openly, as well as their attempts at exploring beyond heteronormative sexual representations have often been met with severe criticism. We all know of the role played by the CBFC, or so many films that have tried to depict homosexuality have been banned, or films from which specific sexual erotic scenes or dialogues or those portraying nudity or female sexuality have been censored by the CBFC on grounds of being unsuitable for viewing of the Indian audiences. Even the Indecent Representation of Women Prohibition Act 1986, even this act prohibits the indecent depiction of women, which is defined as the depiction in any manner of the figure of a woman, her form or body or any part thereof, in such way as to have the effect of being indecent or derogatory to or denigrating women, or is likely to deprive, corrupt, or injure the public morality or morals. So if we go back to the history of the cases of films banned and censored by the CBFC over the years, it can be observed that any expression of women exhibiting sexual desires in media narratives have been considered to be indecent and immoral by the court. So, and this is not the case only in films, but also in television, which is heavily regulated by the guidelines of the Cable Television Networks Regulation Act 1995. Now, as television gave way to digital platforms that have revolutionized the audience's viewing experiences, gradually shifting from sitting together at home and watching soaps with the family members, one episode at a time when it is aired, to accessing programs as per one's convenient time and space, along with the private viewing opportunity, the trends of representation of sexual content as well as perspectives on sexuality have also started to transform. Not only content producers are becoming bolder and more liberal in their experimentation with digital storytelling approaches, the taste of the new age audience of the digital medium is also in rhythm with the changing landscapes of sexual sexuality in serialized and fictionalized narratives in the media. So with the rise of this new public sphere, which presents the platform to each individual to express themselves, sexual conversations have become more commonplace. So while television kept playing around sexual taboos without daring to cross the line in terms of sexual expression explicitly, web series on OTT platforms, which are free of any kind of censorship so far, I'm afraid maybe not for too long, have taken a giant leap in untabooing or breaking the silence around discussions on sex or sexual behavior in their digital narratives. So generally, heterosexuality is considered to be the most dominant sexual practice of preference in most cultures all over the world. And mediated representations have since ages been promoting and normalizing gendered images of men and women in heterosexual romantic relationships. I have taken the cases of 3 series, Romulan Jugal, 4 More Shots, and Made in Heaven, and I have done a feminist textual analysis, deep textual analysis for these web series. Romulan Jugal is the love story of a gay couple narrating their struggles of self-acceptance of their sexual identities, as well as that of the society's acceptance of their sexuality, along with dealing with issues of family clashes, clashing cultures, homophobia, and societal pressures. So this series was in this case, for the first time ever, an Indian series presents a narrative that not only raises an issue that is considered a taboo or shamed upon in the concerned society, but also assigns a much needed positive treatment to the subject. It is also noteworthy that this series was released in 2015, which was 3 years even before homosexuality was legally decriminalized in the historic judgment by the Supreme Court of India. So further, there are several examples from Made in Heaven also, where homosexuality is the key issues dealt with. So even though homosexuality is now legal in the country, the remnants of the conservative mindset in the society still pose a threat to the rights of the people belonging to the LGBTQI community, who even today struggle to find acceptance in the midst of hegemonic heterosexuality. Thus, media narratives that challenge this heteronormativity are not only sources of courage and inspiration for sexual minorities to come out in the open, but also much needed spaces for suppressed sexual expression. So in these digital narratives, I can summarize 3 themes that can be identified. That one is the untabooing the act of sex itself. Then there are narratives beyond heteronormativity. And the third aspect is the unexplored terrains of female sexuality. So female sexuality also has been a major topic of discussion within the fields of women's studies, feminist theory, and politics. Popular culture has a long history of objectification and sexualization of women in its representation. However, despite such blatant sexualization of women's body in the media, women's sexuality is still considered a taboo. The reason is that women's sexuality continues to be presented through a male gaze. The representations of sexuality on screen continue to perpetuate the idea that women's sexuality is subservient to men's pleasure. The dominant imagery is that of promoting the belief that it is the women's role to entice men and men are to take pleasure from it. So a close look at this web series also reveals that taboos around female sexuality and expression of sexual desire is gradually being overcome, which several examples can be shared from this series, 4 More Shots. So, yes, just another minute.
Yeah.
Taboos around female sexuality and expression of female desire are gradually being overcome, from women being the object of sexualization. Women's sexuality is now on the pathway of finding new voices for itself through these digital narratives. Lust and desire in the context of female sexuality are slowly being looked beyond the rose-tinted glasses of morality. The digital space is gradually proving to be one such space that has in its own way offered an opportunity for discussions on unexplored terrains of sexuality to take place. This changing paradigm of alternative trends of representations are not only challenging normative ideologies, but also leading towards a new sense of empowerment and freedom. So that's all from my part. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I have one question from the audience. How do you feel the symbolism has changed after the historic decision from the Supreme Court? Do you feel the symbolism has changed in any way in representation?
Yes, pretty much. I mean, if we look at the like the cases which I quoted right now, these were some of the initial ones. Okay, but ever since this web series in India started around 2014-15, and it's 2021 right now, and in the last 5-6 years, there's been a major boom in the number of web series that have been produced, and I think in almost more than 50% of this, sexuality, and alternative sexuality is it finds representation in these OTT platforms in all of these series. So I think there definitely has been change, and this historic judgment has a lot to do in in inspiring such content. In fact, the audiences have now become users of media, and they are immersed in this complex media ecology of divides. So the traditional mass media were suited to the task of presenting continuous repetitive messages to a large number of audiences. But today the mass view of society has given way to a more complex and dynamic social structure, as constantly reorganizing this this connection. So we are living in an age where audience no longer plays a passive role, and media content is increasingly being influenced by the audience and public opinions. So the digital media is one such platform which gives the audience the opportunity to interact directly with content creators and provide instant feedback. So the fate of digital media is decided by the number of likes and views and subscriptions of the audiences, making it imperative for the content creators to go with the flow of popular public opinions and create content keeping in tandem with the popular ideologies.
I have one more question, ma'am. What about the child sexual abuse? Does that also fall under the sexuality in Indian media? This question is from Rahul Kumar.
I don't think so. That I think falls under a different. I think it will come against crime against women and children. It's a different thing altogether. We are talking about sexuality in terms of expression, not in terms of oppression.
I think that's beautifully put, Tina, ma'am. Over to you, Dr. Asha.
So, Dr. Bora, very nice presentation, very lucid. I enjoyed your presentation a lot. I was reminded of a paper by Richa Nagar and Amanda Loxwer, where they are discussing sexuality of two women of some obscure village in Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh border. And so that's why I have a little complicated question, because the kind of sexuality which is getting represented in web series, which is alternative sexuality, and we appreciate it, but to express themselves, they are using high spaces of consumption. So they are very glossy, consumer-oriented expression. It requires lot of material. It requires lot of capital to express that way. So how would you can that be emancipatory for people with lesser material resources, or who cannot access those high spaces of consumption? So yeah, that would be my question.
I completely agree. In fact, not only in terms of excess and consumption, but also in terms of representation. I think if we look at most of these web series that have come up in recent years, it is representing only one section of the society. And there will be very few examples of, cases of representations of rural societies, or, so mostly the high class the privileged people are being represented even in these digital narratives. So that is also one factor. Secondly, about what you asked, that in terms of consumption, I think the conversations have started, so it has to start at some point, and then we have to make our way through ensuring that all are, it becomes all inclusive, and it represents all sections of society, and those unheard voices can also be expressed. So it's the first challenge was to normalize these narratives, which had not been possible since so many years through traditional media, with the because of censorship or because of the societal taboos. The conversations itself were not welcome. They were being banned. They were not even being accessed to the audiences. It's only because now that it's open and it's censorship free that this content have come to play. So I think slowly in future, I'm sure more voices can be heard.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tina ma'am. I think it is very important, the kind of influence that Indian cinema and entertainment industry has on the audience. It is very important to give equal and I think a clear representation of all sexualities to normalize basically. So our next presentation is from Neha Bhushan and Rahul Kumar. Their topic is anxiety-inducing media, influence of OTT content on youth. Neha ma'am?
Good morning, ma'am. Ma'am, may I share my screen?
Yes, please go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Neha Bhushan, Assistant Professor, Sharda University, and this paper, Anxiety Inducing Media, Influence of OTT Content on Youth, is along with my scholar, who is Rahul Kumar. So, firstly, I would like to share some insight about the topic. So, basically, this study, when we have started this study, it was an attempt which was based on most of the literature reviews on television, the influence of television on the audience, and it has been seen that based on review of literature, that television viewership had, given a lot of anxiety to the viewers. There were many researchers in the past which has made such kind of claims. So when we had started working on this topic, what we have realized that with the rise in OTT platform and the viewership, especially in the youth, as I have seen the first presentation of this session, it was very much related to this topic, that how the binge watching has been increased in among the youth. So this study is an attempt to understand the psychological influence of OTT content among youth. So there are numerous studies in the past, as I said, on the influence of television content, which concluded that television content induces anxiety among viewers. So based on this particular viewpoint, this study tries to know the influence of OTT platform, which is now very much trending, especially among youth, and the anxiety level of those subjects who are getting a lot of viewership of this particular OTT platform. So as we know, the content is a lifeline of these streaming channels, and it affects the psychology of the viewers, leaving an impact on their mind. It is important to focus on what the audiences are getting served by these streaming channels, with rising demand of viewership of OTT platforms in India among the youth. So several problems which are cropping up related to their lifestyle, health, family life, and even the society as a whole. The objective of this research is to study the influence of OTT platforms on anxiety level of the viewers. The data collection and the methodology. So as I said, our sample was the people belonging to the age group of 18 to 37, which we have considered as youth. And the data has been collected from the 100 subjects for the purpose of understanding that whether the excessive exposure to the OTT platforms has been increasing their anxiety, or are they helping them in living a very balanced life with the entertainment and work-life balance, we have used Beg Anxiety Inventory, which is a self-report measure of anxiety. So it is a kind of standardized scale, which is consists of 21 item scale with a Likert scale ranging from 0 to 3. So basically ranging from 0 to 63, measuring items, the intensity of cognitive, affective, and somatic anxious symptoms. So this is a kind of a scale which can be used for any kind of physiological issues, as well as to know somebody's psychological behavior as well. So these are the some of the norms which shows the level of anxiety in the subjects. So it can be low anxiety if it is 0 to 21. It can be moderate to anxiety if it is 22 to 35, and above 36 score shows that yes, a particular exposure is increasing the anxiety among the subjects. So the investigator has converted this Beck inventory anxiety inventory in the form of Google form, only for the convenience purpose, so that we can collect data from most of the youth. And in this youth category, most of the students of our own university are included, and and also those who are watching these OTT platforms for a particular time in their day-to-day life. So these are the hypotheses which we had taken before coming before even conducting our data analysis. So the anxiety level of the subjects increases by watching OTT platform, as I said, based on most of the review of the literature. What we have as a result, what we have seen the pattern that most of these viewership and especially the trend of binge watching increases somehow the anxiety of the subjects. And the next hypothesis which we have taken was also the anxiety level of the subjects decreases by watching OTT platform. And the null hypothesis was that there is no effect on the viewers. So now these are the results of this study. So it is evident from the highly positive value of skewness that anxiety level of most of the OTT platform users is very low. And when I came out on this kind of conclusion based on the entire interpretation of the result, that most of the OTT platform users are showing very low level of anxiety. So out of the 100 subjects, approximately 66 have lower level of anxiety as compared to their group means score, which is 8.98. So these are some of the tables which I have used in this presentation from my paper. So these results were quite insightful for me. The reason being that when we are talking about the viewership of television, which was far more less than OTT, because in case of television, there was no no trend of binge watching, or somebody is watching a television for more than, let's say, 5 or 6 hours. But in case of OTT, this kind of trend is there. And what conclusion I could have drawn from this, from the result of this study, was the kind of freedom which the person gets in case of OTT platform. The freedom to select the content, which by watching that content, I can feel relaxed after a lot of hectic schedule, or maybe at the time of pandemic when there were a lot of stressful information, and news channels were providing such information. So OTT has somehow given that relaxation and freedom to the viewers in this particular situation. So on the basis of data analysis, researchers are able to reject the null hypothesis that definitely there is no effect on the anxiety level of the subjects. No, there is effect, and who watch OTT platforms and accept, the researcher is accepting the experimental hypothesis, that is H2, that anxiety level of the subjects decreases by watching OTT platforms as true. So the result confirms that the viewers of OTT platform are not anxious, and on the other hand, they get relaxed by watching OTT platform. So this can be said, as I said, OTT platforms help users to reduce anxiety as the availability and choice of content are in viewers' control, unlike television. So there are various studies in the past demonstrating the fact that more time is spent in front of television, the greater the likelihood of experiencing anxiety and depression. But the result of this study shows that unlike television, OTT platforms do not induce anxiety. On the other hand, it helps the users to manage their mood and reduce their anxiety. That's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. I don't have any questions from the audience. Over to you, Asha, ma'am.
Thank you, Professor Bhushan. Since I'm not acquainted with psychological methods, so somebody from outside the discipline is asking you a curious question, uh, because this generalization that television induces anxiety and OTT platforms are reducing anxiety is slightly not digestible, because can you give more evidence? Like this was based on certain interview, like a certain set of students, and for how long, and like how what was the comparative scale, because the entire presentation was about OTT platforms and how it was conducted with respect to OTT platform, how research with respect to televisions were conducted, and how television were inducing anxiety and OTT is not inducing anxiety. Could you say a bit more? Could you provide a little more evidence?
Definitely, ma'am. Ma'am, I have personally, I have not conducted any research on the effect of television, which may increase the anxiety among the viewers. But I have not included those part of presentation where I, as I quoted most of the review of literature, that television, the previous studies which has been conducted on television, the results of those studies mention that yes, somehow some of the programs over the period of time which are available on television screen are increasing the anxiety of the subjects. My research question starts the same kind of result, the same kind of effect if it is available on the viewers of the OTT platform. So, for my subjects, I have used this psychological standardized scale, but I have ensured that those subjects are the viewer of OTT platform and they are watching that platform for a considerable amount of time. It should not be something like they are watching it only for half an hour and we are able to conclude that. So in my entire questionnaire, the questions like how much time do they spend on OTT platform or any of the OTT platforms, we had given options uh, out of all the available OTT platforms. So these options has been shared with the participants, and those who were watching it for a considerable amount of time, their behavioral changes and their anxiety based on the items of this scale has been taken for the consideration.
So my question to you would be, because television is just a device with cable, and OTT platforms are basically, there are no cable, non-cable devices.
Right.
But more or less the content which television gives, and OTT platforms, yes, there are more innovative content because it has given a lot of space to many new players. Hence, there are more curated, unique kind of content, but both platforms are giving content. So how just changing a platform uh, can have a different impact, because platforms are different, technology is different, but the content is more or less same web series can be broadcasted through a cable television network. So will that have a different impact if that is?
Very interesting question, ma'am. Basically, this question is giving me idea to go more deeper into this topic. But as I said, when I came on the conclusion of this research, that see, there were many, such examples which I have seen being quoted by various researchers. Like if somebody is watching the crime series, right? They are becoming more anxious, like Crime Patrol and all such kind of program. There was a time when there were a lot of research on these programs, and people were not having a lot of choice in their hand, that they are not watching. If I want to spend my time with my family members to watch a television screen, I used to spend that time and watching whatsoever was available in front of me. And now the freedom which I'm getting, if I'm not a person who feels comfortable watching crime or feels comfortable watching horror shows, then I got this freedom in my hand, which is giving me some more clarity that how I can feel relaxed in my free time, and obviously impacting my entire psychological perspective.
All
So,
right.
but yes, this is the conclusion which I can draw from the current study, but this study is not based on this particular research. So this is a very valid question which must be raised.
All
So
right.
thank you so much, ma'am.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Bhushan.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Is by Shubham Mandal. His topic is a study of OTT as a platform for new film release.
So, good afternoon, one and all present here. And let me just share my screen. My name is Shubham Mandan, and my topic is a study of OTT as a platform for new film release. So, as we all know, 2020 was a dark spot in everyone's life, and somehow, and to some extent, it has also affected the film releases also. Like if we consider, like previously, we can consider the blockbuster hits on the basis of their weekly collection on the basis of every theaters or cities. But now, after this COVID, most of the time the theaters were closed, so the movies were released on the OTT platforms. During this time, a lot of movies like which was the first movie, that is Gulabo Sitabo, starring Ayushmann Khurrana and Amitabh Bachchan, was the first movie to release in OTT platform, that too in Amazon Prime Video. And since then, we have witnessed a lot of movie releases like Sadak 2 and Lakshmi, as I said, and Dil Bechara. Moving on, India's streaming market is one of the largest and fast growing in the world, with major platforms like Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, Hotstar, Voot, ALT Balaji, Z5, and MX Player. And I can literally say that these platforms have been literally grown in the last 12 to 18 months as compared to the previous 2 to 3 years. According to the Global Web Index survey, the video market in the country is estimated at over 700 million and is expected to rise to 2.4 billion by 2023, with the highest growth forecast for the OTT industry. So, my objective of the study is first, shift of film viewership from theaters to OTT platform, and this will cinema shift to OTT platforms in the upcoming years. Second, what will the audience prefer after COVID for cinema, OTT or theaters? Moving on. Audience perception of films released on OTT platforms. My methodology is my research has followed a quantitative research technique for the data collection, and the objective of this research is to find out whether can OTT be a platform for new film release. Moving on, data collection. The study follows a quantitative approach and gathers data from both secondary and primary sources. The secondary data has been collected through website and e-libraries, books, and journals. The primary data is collected through survey, and which is in the open-ended questionnaire addressed to the college-going students within the age group of 18 to 23. So here are my findings. As we can see, the questionnaire has been filled by mostly the students, but also some of them are from different professions. As we can see here, one of them is cameraman and other is doctor. So followed by students, we can see here interns and sales are the most respondents who fill the questionnaire. As you can see, here are some movies which released just before the COVID on theaters like Joker and Dream Girl, and also the movies like Lakshmi and Sadak are also included. So mostly the films which people have seen were on the OTT platform, as we can see here. Moving on, the next question was which experience was better. So surprisingly, the last question, as we saw, that which platform people preferred which platform. So we saw that OTT has more viewership than the theaters. But in this question, I personally got to know that whether people watch movies on OTT or theaters, but people prefer watching movie in theater over OTT platforms. Next question. We can see the satisfaction level which people receive by watching movies on OTT platform, and the same goes for the movies in theater. So here's the another question. After the opening of theaters, will you go and see movies in theaters or prefer OTT platforms? Here, people prefer theaters over OTTs after even after the COVID and lockdown. Till now we have seen that people prefer watching movies in theaters over OTT. But in this question, where the respondents were asked a question, do you prefer watching a movie while enjoying the outing and ambience in theater, or you prefer to get cozy in your blanket and turn your laptop? So people chose enjoying movie in outer ambience instead of get cozy in blanket and turn their laptop on. In the initial research, it was pretty much opposite of each other. But when the final results came out, it was quite surprising that people still love to enjoy the ambience instead of getting cozy in their blankets. Uh, Moving on, do you prefer the easy availability of movies? And yes, as we all see that people prefer the easy availability of the movies on OTT platforms over the theaters, and people also prefer OTT platform in terms of cost effectiveness as compared to the theaters. And obviously, it is quite commendable. Like people pay 500 to 1,000 for a single movie. And on the other hand, if you pay that for a single OTT platform, you have an open diaspora of lot of variety of films. Like for even a Netflix, you can search or you can stream through other countries' content as well. So last question: do you like watching uncensored content on the OTT platform or censored content in theaters? In this question, the respondents prefer uncensored content on OTT platform. See, I have interacted with few of them, and they said the uncensored content were more real life. Like for example, if we talk about Sacred Games or Mirzapur, they felt like that actually happens in either their hometown or they see that kind of stuff happen around them instead of all the rosy and flowery sceneries which are depicted in the cinemas or theaters. So the conclusion, uh, in the conclusion, I just want to conclude that after doing this research, I came to the conclusion that people prefer watching movies on OTT, but still, if they are given an option to watch films in theater, they will still choose a movie in theater instead of OTT platform. So we can say that people are accepting the OTT platforms as the new release for the films, but they are yet not ready to accept it as a new mode for the film release. And with that, I'm concluding my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Shubham. So, Shubham, I have one question from the audience. Do you
Yes, ma'am.
feel that the series that run on OTT, according to your research, do you feel that they are more relevant with respect to popularity as compared to cinema?
Mama, if we talk about the series, or even if we talk about the films or cinemas released in OTT platforms, we can see that earlier, in the past year, they don't have a censorship. So the writers and directors, even the viewers, also get a diaspora of content and very raw content. So if I talk about a movie, for example, let's take Border, and if I talk about a web series, for example, The Family Man or The Forgotten Army, we can see that Border has a really emotional touch with it. Okay, and the Mother Earth, and okay, the Jackie Shroff thing, the head held high. But on the other hand, if we talk about the Forgotten Army, we can see that things are uncovered in very detailed way. The overlaying structures of two stories. So people always love to watch which is raw. And obviously, if I prefer watching something, so I would prefer it watching the reality and the real content behind it. If I watch a, biography over some personality or some athlete, so I would really love to watch his or her struggle and their success. Not only their success, like okay, they win and they kept on, now they made their name. I would love to see how they get there. And OTT content were providing them, even the web series or the films. So yeah, I would say that the OTT content has a better enhancement and viewership, and in terms of representation, they also have a better view. That's it.
I have another question from the audience for you, Shubham. They want to
Yes,
know
ma'am.
that you talked about nationality of the films. You said that with Netflix you can get a plethora of films even from international
Yes,
mediums.
ma'am. Sure.
Do you feel that has added to the popularity and is somewhere aiding the release of films on OTT platforms?
Yes, ma'am. Sure. Why not? If we talk about the last few months, in last few months, a lot of web series and a lot of web contents have been released on the OTT platforms. As we see, in the Netflix is also released their variety of shows, and they are still keep on releasing. And last few weeks, if we check on the Netflix page or the Netflix release list, so we can see that most of the content are foreign content, and people are eagerly waiting to watch. For example, if we talk about the case study of La Casa de Papel, that is a Money Heist. Money Heist was a flop show. That's why it got off down the Spain television. But when Netflix bought their rights, they released it on their platform, and we can see how people are going head over heels over Money Heist. So yeah, I would say that the OTT platform and presenting of this diaspora of contents, this has also contributed to their popularity and their viewership. So yes.
Thank you, Shubham. I think you brilliantly explained both the questions. Over to you, Asha ma'am.
Okay, sure. My question to you would be, because I suppose this research was conducted during the pandemic, and hence
Yes, ma'am.
most of the people perhaps are craving to go out, and that might have affected
Exactly.
their response of
Exactly. That might be.
preferring theater over OTT. Uh, have you looked at any data or any study done before pandemic era on viewership? Because OTT has existed for some time now, even
Yes,
before
ma'am.
it has become more part of our lives during the pandemic, but before the pandemic it existed and
Obviously,
people
ma'am.
were watching, they were going to cinemas also. So is there any comparison or comparative study between viewership of cinema, theater, and OTT? Yeah, that would bring more
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Sure. I would really love to answer this question. I was literally waiting, like someone would ask, and thank you so much, ma'am, for putting this question. So I have this another study going with this, like whether people the viewership of content prior COVID and during COVID. So, ma'am, as you said, that obviously during this COVID, people minds were affected because they couldn't go out, and obviously they couldn't watch the films in theaters. So, yes, ma'am, as we can see that OTT platforms were present before the era also, and obviously during the era it has boomed, obviously. So, if we talk about TVF, so TVF is also OTT platform where we have a plethora of content, and we also all of us can relate to some of their characters. So OTT sorry, the viral fever, that is the TVF, is one of the first OTT platform in India, which create the India's first web series, that is Permanent Roommates, followed by the TVF Pictures, and each of these shows are their different categories. One is over the startup, and the other one is over relationship of two person. Okay, so we can see that the viewership of those shows, obviously prior COVID, were there. People loved it, but the viewership has increased during the pandemic. Even there's this show by C5, that is Aisha. It has a very least or very low viewership, which has increased during the pandemic. And according to the Blockbuster Office, we can also say that if a movie is earning 104 crore within the 2 days of its release, so we can conclude that obviously people love movies. And yes, ma'am, obviously OTT was also there before COVID, but people don't go to theaters only to watch movies, but they go to theaters to enjoy the ambience, to create a family time or quality time with their loved ones. Or we can say I can go out for movies with my friends to enjoy the weekend, or I can go out to movie just because I like the movie, or it's a family evening, let's go and watch a movie. So watching movie in theater was not only watching a movie, but it was also a quality time to spend with your loved ones. So yes, I can say that with my research also, that people love watching movies in theaters, and they will still prefer. But yeah, Gen Z, on the other hand, Gen Z, they would love to get cozy in their blankets and get their laptops, and obviously they would love to watch their favorite film or series with a bucket of ice cream. Yeah, I think that's
So let me ask a devil's advocate's question.
it. Okay,
How
ma'am.
does your work speak to the existing body of work on viewership?
Mm, sorry, ma'am, I couldn't get you. I'm sorry.
So, frankly speaking,
Yes,
how
ma'am.
is this kind of don't take it otherwise? It is
Yeah, sure, ma'am. Sure, ma'am.
limits to push your limits.
Sure,
How
ma'am.
is this kind of research contributing to the body of knowledge in communication
Um,
media studies? Yeah.
Sure, ma'am. That would be a really great question. That is a really great question. How can you contribute? Okay. So I just want to ask one question. Uh, okay, please, please don't. I don't want to offend anyone. Just a question, ma'am. What do you think? Like the students of my age, that is college-going students, 18 to 23, what would they prefer? Chocolate ice cream or vanilla ice cream? That is, I know it is not related to our research or this session.
It is a market research. Like if
Exactly.
I was an ice cream seller,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
would do this research. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. That's what I'm trying to say. If you were, or I am, or I were a ice cream seller, that would be a great deal. And if we talk about the film releases, that's also part of media. So this research can contribute either this way or that way to the media industry. So I would say not to great extent, but to some extent it can contribute. Thank you.
Oh, nice way to answer this. Yeah.
Thank you
Thank
so much, ma'am. Thank you so much.
you. Okay. Thank you, Shubham.
Thank you.
Thank, thank you, Shubham. I think that was a brilliant presentation. Our next and last presentation for the day is by Ms. Shruti V.S., Assistant Professor, DME Media School, and her topic is Impact of Mediatization, Popular Culture on Tourism, Understanding the Game of Thrones Phenomena. Ms. Shruti?
So the topic for my presentation is the impact of mediatized popular culture on tourism, the understanding the Game of Thrones phenomena. Through this paper, I'm exploring the impact of the popularity of the Game of Thrones series, which started in 2011 and concluded in 2019, which was a pre-pandemic, pre-OTT, where the OTT was not such a giant platform then. So this paper is exploring the impact of Game of Thrones still from that period of time to till this period of time, and I'm looking at the confluence of the two cultural industries which is associated through this entire thing, that is the tourism and the media industry. And for this purpose, thematic analysis of the official state tourism websites of Croatia and Northern Ireland is undertaken to understand the use of the popular media cultures by both these respective countries. Tourism and media. So this is a confluence which I am proposing that these are the two leisure activities where one is associated with. Tourism and television viewing, both of them, then when it comes together, brings forward the concept of film tourism or the film to induced tourism. According to Riley and Van Doren, the film induced tourism is defined as a phenomena where people are induced to visit those places which they have seen on the screen. Other theorists like Hudson and Ritchie also describes it as it's a visits to those destinations which were once featured in television or some kind of screen. Taking it ahead, tourism as an industry and its interaction with the media industry, it comes together in a global context when it is coming through the form of the global creative culture industry, which encompasses films, television, literature, and its growing potential to reach wider and wider audiences is possible through two aspects, which is the globalization and secondly the Web 2.0. For globalization, I'm using the Arjun Appadurai's propagation that due to the mass migration and mass mediatization has led to the emergence of something called scapes, which is covering technology, media, finance, and idea. So film-induced tourism or the media, film-induced tourism is covering all of these scapes, and when they come together, there is a constant production and distribution of these different kinds of realities, which is there on the screen towards what is there in our life as per se. And when the coming of the globalization, the neoliberal world, along with the coming of the Web 2.0, defined as a web as a platform where people are not just using internet for the purpose of information gathering, but also to interact, share, etc. So thereby, the role of technology is coming towards to develop a tourist gaze, where this tourist gaze is not coming in the unidirectional way where a tourist expert or academicians or people are directing this gaze, but it is coming in a reciprocal process where the tourist is at the center of this knowledge mediated phase and they're responding towards this particular case. Why have I taken Game of Thrones? And I would like to speak about it. This is a series which television series, and television series, as we all know, have a longer period of screen time which is there. The storyline is made for compact case. In this case of television series, episodes are open-ended. A number of interconnections is possible, which cultivates a stronger empathetic relation between viewers and characters of the particular show. This particular show is set in a medieval fantasy novel series where in this fantasy fictional continent, Westeros and Essos, separated by the strip of water called the Narrow Sea. And Westeros has many kingdoms such as the North, the Iron Island, Dawn, King's Landing, Small Stormland, Karth, north of the Wall. All of these regions of these fictional continents have distinct geographical descriptions. So thereby they had to be shot at different regions to represent this kind of geographic diversity which is there in this particular series. So the shooting has taken all over Northern Ireland, Spain, Morocco, Croatia, Scotland, Iceland, Malta, and this particular series in fact broke a lot of worldwide viewership practices which was there, and the popularity was not just limited to the Western countries or the US, but also it became popular in Asia. And this popularity of Asia was first brought toward of the relevance of the torrent websites which are there. So in fact, Game of Thrones is the most downloaded series on torrents. And secondly, the HBO also started dubbing the show into several Asian languages. HBO even stepped up its marketing in Asia, where one of the actresses of this particular series, she went on to visit Japan for the promotion of the series before its sixth season, which is there. And lastly, the influence of the fandom and social media cultures led to a lot of plot twists, sudden death within the series, created a plethora of memes, story grabs, theories about what is going to happen next. All of these things, the plethora of it created that it exposed people who are not even watching it, not even aware of it, to be exposed towards it, and they are then motivated to watch it, and therefore therefore then it was being capitalized by the tourism sectors of where these series were shot. Why Game of Thrones locations, how are they different from other sets? While we have many popular web series, popular television series, popular film series, but this becomes a unique kind of a series where there is a transnational nature of the geography of where it has been shot. A lot of money has been spent on its other special features, etc., to enhance and represent the medieval fantasy world of the narrative which is there. These films were also shot at places which were not popular, and therefore they remained outside of the mass tourism spaces which are there, and therefore it had a significant amount of influence towards the filming which has been there. I would be using John Urie's concept on places from his books, Consuming Places. So he is saying about that places are, he constitute place as a consuming place, and he's describing the consuming places into by 4 points. One, the first is that places are increasingly being restructured as centers of consumption. Secondly, it is these places are consumed particularly by the visual aspect which is there. Thirdly, they are literally consumed in terms of the overconsumption, or over time it can be exhausted by use in whatever means it is there. And lastly, that the localities also consume the identities of these places. Now, looking at the Northern Ireland, and I'm understanding this case of the confluence of the media and the tourism industry through the case of Northern Ireland and Croatian tourism industry. Northern Ireland, they in their official website, they have created a particular microsite for the Game of Thrones specialized tours which are there. There were 26 shooting locations were identified. There were 26 locations where the series was shot, and all of these have been mapped in terms of these what you are seeing on the screen, the kind of the tours they have they created, the kind of planning prospect they have invited to people to have sightseeing, to go into immersive experiences, etc., which are there. And the Northern Ireland's tourism before Game of Thrones was not thriving. During the 1960s, 1996, 1997 years, where it is also called the period of the Troubles, there were a lot of frequency of guns and bombs attacks in the city, which led to the decline in the popularity of Northern Ireland as a tourist place. So therefore, the success of the show garnered such an attraction by its viewers that it redeemed Northern Ireland of its past legacy. Coming to Croatia, Croatia was suffering from the effects of the subprime crisis in 2008. And with the coming of this particular series and the popularity of this series, the Croatian government also didn't, get behind about capitalizing on this to invite people to come and welcome visitors for the Croatian, using taglines like Croatia will got you, or which is with the Game of Thrones. They are using all of these visual materials, the film text with their text which is there as a brochure for the coming visitors which are coming towards it. So thereby, if I applying a thematic analysis by the Belson's model, I and using the framework of John Urie, I come to this conclusion that each of these official websites have their dedicated microsites. They have constant references to the series in terms of the plan and the tools which have been given, and these places are given as a purpose of marketed as a purpose of consumption. And media text here is playing an active role in social structure or construction of the place, and it is used as a strong tool for marketing a particular destination. The relationship between film and TV series here is leading to an embodied performance where the visitors are performing to what they have seen on the screen. So therefore, coming to the conclusion of my paper, this confluence of tourism and media industry is emerging from a kind of marketing tool which is about a destination marketing technique, where the paradigm shift is taken from what there has been already existed and already in a popular domain, and thereby the relationship between the film or TV series lead to an embodied performance of these tourists, where they're moving through spaces of what they have seen, or they are even in fact enacting about it. There is an inherent self-awareness in this kind of tourist experience. Therefore, these tourists becomes active participants, and the filmic text becomes the new brochure material. So this kind of confluence is also framed by the global tourist systems which are there, and this is leading to something called the sacred popular domain of where we are spectacularizing the places and these popular tourist sites. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shruti. I think that was a very nice presentation. Your idea definitely is growing, and it can definitely help in economic models for tourism in the future. So it opens up a lot of future scope of for researchers. I have a few questions though.
Sure.
My first question is, did you come across any drawbacks of film tourism in your literature review?
The drawbacks, during my literature review, I came across some of the studies which have been done on film tourism, where it has been found that some of the case studies have found that the lack of preparedness of the locals, they had to deal with a lot of tourism influx, which was not expected. There is an exploitation of visitors, the lack of preparedness, and the locations and the visitors slash fans have to also face the location dissimilarity to what they have been portrayed on television and film, leading to a decrease in visitor satisfaction. So it is something, some of the studies and some of the research has been taken into this particular context regarding this.
I have one more question. What kind of film tourism is there in India? Do you see any instances of that?
Of course, in today morning only we had a session on the celebrity cultures, which was there, and with Bollywood as this amazing, spectacular. It is the perfect place where, and we in India, especially in terms of Bollywood, we have a very unique kind of film tourism which happens because the celebrities also takes on this role of this divine being, where a lot of conversing about the stardom and fan cultures is also included, motivated by this darshan philosophy that this desire to see and to be seen. So that also comes in play. Even when people go to Bombay for a tour or something like that, they go and stand outside, they visit all the bungalows of these Bollywood celebrities which are there. They visit the balcony way, which is very popularly we also see. So there's a unique kind of film tourist experience we are coming, where it is going beyond the normative understanding of these kind of experiences and coming towards the other ideas which as culturally are the land here we have certain practices. So I hope I have answered your question, Mudita.
Thank you, Ms. Shruti. Over to you, Asha ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Shruti. It was a very comprehensive presentation, and I have a curious question. How did this topic occur to you? Why you decided to investigate this, conceptualize this in the first place? Tell me your story.
It started in 2019. I mean, I was also introduced to this particular series through, because I was exposed to memes and a lot of articles, and everybody around us was watching this. So in fact, there was an entire discourse around this particular series that all social media profile, everybody is sharing comments, everybody is sharing spoilers. So everybody was afraid of these spoilers which have been there, and that's where the journey with to take up this, okay, what is happening here, and then that's where it started, and that's where I started to watch was talking about it. So this is something which I must also, and as a I was a student of film studies at that point of time, and as a student at that point of time, and also as a general appreciator of films, fantasy and these beautiful location is something which personally also, drives me or attracts me to watch and enjoy it in a very visual sense. So one must have been not just this particular series, but other series or other kind of works as well. The visually pleasing scene of it that inspired to take it up, and it just happened, and it's a part of a larger project, because this, like I was saying, that here for this paper I've only taken two particular locations, which is the Northern Ireland and Croatia. There are other places where it was shot. I mean, it's part of a complete project which is in underway, and I hope to complete it soon. So that's about the story of music.
Doctoral dissertation.
It's an independent project which is going on.
Okay. Because in film studies, there are certain cult films and certain visual material they have acquired. Um, they have become a sort of a field in themselves. For example, I have heard about
Yeah.
Harry Potter studies. So, would you like to comment on that genre of studies?
There is also, ma'am, you have pointed out the Harry Potter studies, and there are places, there are universities and departments where there are papers offered on this global media culture and Game of Thrones. So, I mean, with an avid interest in popular culture, I really welcome these kind of studies, because what happens in academic culture is we should be talking about such kind of whatever kind of products, the media products which is there. But when it is consumed, when it is in not just in terms of the viewing, or taking the pleasures of the viewing, but also in other way, you are visiting these places, or you're dressing up in, I mean, there is for a scholar of media scholars, it is a very curious kind of uh, it offers a very curious point where you can start to investigate why there is such an interest about it. And when we go to unravel that kind of discourse, it of course becomes an interesting study outside of it. And it's not just with Game of Thrones or Harry Potter. Even with the Marvel series, there are courses we have designed for students. So I welcome all these kind of studies, because with the kind of diversity in media and communication, um, we shouldn't be having a closed approach towards studying this. It offers an interesting study to take it up.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Ms. Shruti. Thank you, Asha ma'am. With this, we come to the last presentation of the day. I would like to thank all the scholars for participating in this session. I extend my heartfelt gratitude to Dr. Asha Singh for sparing time and joining us. Thank you so much, ma'am. It gives me great pleasure to inform that Michael Matthias, Department of Mass Communication, NISCOT, and Dr. Amit Chawla, Department of Mass Communication, School of Media, Film and Entertainment, Sharda University, have received the Best Paper Award in Technical Session 4. The topic of their paper was Parental Mediation of Smartphone Usage Amongst Teenagers of Bangalore. I now hand over the forum to Nandini.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I would like to request Professor Dr. Susmita Bala, Head DME Media School and Chief Associate Convener of ICANN4, to give the concluding remarks. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Nandini. Thanks, Dr. Asha Singh, for chairing the technical session on OTT and web series in the face of COVID-19 pandemic. We all are fond of watching web series. And during past 1 year, our consumption has increased. In this session, various aspects of OTT content were discussed and presented. Thanks to all the authors for their presentations. Thank you. Thanks to all of you.
Thank you, ma'am. I would like to thank Dr. Asha Singh for agreeing to chair this session and for her wonderful input to the researchers. I would like to extend my gratitude to Professor Dr. Ambrish Saxena, Dean DME Media School, Convener ICANN4, Dr. Susmita Bala, Head DME Media School, Chief Associate Convener for ICANN4, for the ideation and planning of all the sessions. I would like to thank Dr. Manasvi Maheshwari, Ms. Manmeet Kaur, Ms. Shruti V.S., Mr. Mohit Kushorwats, Ms. Mudita Raj, Mr. Pramod Kumar Pandey for their constant support and guidance. A heartfelt thank to Mr. Ritik Ghosh, Mr. Susmantra Sarthi Das, Mr. Sachin Nair, and Mr. Yogesh Sharma for managing the overall digital operation of ICANN4. I would like to thank our newsletter team comprising of both students and faculty members, namely Ms. Sukriti Arora and Dr. Tinam Bora for constantly mentoring and supervising everyone. And also I thank Mr. Muhammad Kamil and Ms. Krishna Pandey for working around the clocks in all the press proceedings. You can also check them out on our official Facebook page of ICANN. I would like to thank Mr. Anmol Mehta from family and Mr. Sumohit Nirala from one of our knowledge partner, K.R. Mangalam University's end, for tirelessly working and making our events look more beautiful digitally with the help of their amazing designs. I would also like to thank our entire team, all faculty members and students who work day and night facing all the challenges and obstacles of the pandemic to make this conference happen. Lastly, I thank all the participants who joined this session, worked so hard on their research papers, and our audience for being here and contributing. I request everyone to follow our social media handles for more updates and information. Do not forget to visit DME website and ICANN website for any details. Stay tuned up for the upcoming session. Next session, we have masterclass on the topic Digitalization Broadcast Media by Mr. R.K. Singh, starting at 2 p.m. IST. In the evening, we have a panel discussion on technology, innovation, and the future of the media, starting at 6 p.m. IST. See you all there. Till then, I, Nandini Srivastava, take your leave. Have a great day ahead.